VVA Chapter 1067, Huntsville, Alabama. General Wesley Clark, VVA Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Retired Army General Wesley Clark received the Vietnam Veterans of America Lifetime Achievement Award during the general session of the National Convention on Thursday morning, July 18th. After graduating from the United States Military Academy in 1966, he studied at Oxford University on a Rhodes Scholarship. He served in the Vietnam War from May 19, 1969 to February 19, 1970 as the commanding officer of a 1st Infantry Division Mechanized Infantry Company. His tour ended after he was shot 4 times in a firefight, an engagement for which he received a Bronze Star and a Silver Star, as well as the Purple Heart. After the war, he served as a White House Fellow in the Ford administration in 1975 to 1976.
He retired from the Army as a 4-star general in 2000, and since then has been an investment banker, businessman, TV commentator, teacher, and the author of 4 books. It's too bad he has nothing to do. His many awards include the Presidential Medal of Freedom and Commander of the French Legion of Honor. And now, one more. The Vietnam Veterans of America Lifetime Achievement Award goes to General Wesley Clark.
John, thank you very much for that citation, and thank you all very much for this very, very meaningful award. I came out here to honor you. I mean, what you have done is absolutely astonishing over the last 30 years. You've changed the way America treats its veterans, and especially the fact that each employee. Looking at this group, you guys are amazing. No one would know it's been 50 years. Honestly, you look great. Yeah. And how about those cheerleaders? Yeah. But General Hayes, when I worked for him, he said, if you're going to give a speech, you got to have 3 things: a snappy beginning, a snappy ending, and you got to keep the 2 as close together as possible. Okay, those cheerleaders were as snappy beginnings as we could ever have here, and I couldn't compete with that. But I do want to say this: I'm very humbled by this award because there's a lot of people who did a lot more than I did in Vietnam. They suffered a lot more than I did, and there's a lot of people who've given as much or more than I have after Vietnam. So this means a lot to me because I look out and you're my brothers. I'll tell you why I say that, because I was a company commander, as John said. I had A Company, 1st and 16th Infantry, which is a mega company. And on the 18th of February, I was missing a platoon leader, 2nd platoon, and so I took the platoon out on patrol, and we left our APCs behind. We were out in the area to the east and slightly north of Saigon, south of War Zone D. And the mission was to prevent a recurrence of Tet. So we didn't want any enemy forces to come down out of War Zone D and attack Saigon. So we were doing offensive patrolling. So I went out with the platoon, we set up an ambush, moved into position. It was a good sight. The VC or NVA were coming down the trail, but they saw my flank guy, fired a machine gun, ran off. So the next day we moved in the direction we thought they came from. Cautiously, carefully, and I was about the 4th guy in this column of about 20 guys. I had a couple of scouts from the battalion up in front of me with M14s, had my RTOs there, and then the dismounted guys from the platoon were behind me. And we were on this big wide path, because we were ducking away, looking at it, watching it. But there wasn't any way to get there except by walking on this footpath. And there was a wood cutting area. So everybody said, watch out for the civilians, they're cutting charcoal, and so we came to this beautiful little crystal clear stream. And I looked at it, I thought about the Florida Ranger camp, because that's what it looked like. Sandy bottom, beautiful water, maybe this wide, had a little bamboo footbridge across it, all woven bamboo. I'm thinking, wasn't that cute? And about 10 seconds later, my point guy up ahead said, sir, I've lost the trail. I look and there's this wall of brush. And it's like, what the hell is a trail? It's just, 10 feet wide, and now you've lost the trail? So I moved up to him, I said, I don't understand. I had my compass in my left hand, I had my M16 in my right hand, I had a map inside my jungle fatigues. And I looked like this. I turned, just as I turned to look back at the rest of the platoon, I thought I had been stung by hornets. My rifle fell out of my hand. I heard bzz, 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 going around my head, and the first thing that went through my mind was, in the Ranger school they said, in Dahlonega in the mountains you can run into a hornet's nest. But I looked down and I saw a piece of white on my hand, and my rifle was laying on the ground, and I turned to the guy next to me, who was this really great young guy from Michigan, and said, I've been shot! He said, and I was reaching down for my rifle. He said, get down! And he knocked me over. And so I scrambled back, and we had a little firefight there. I had taken 4 AK rounds, but I turned just as the guy had me in his sight. So instead of getting it right up the middle, I got the shoulder, the hand, a bullet went through my leg and broke my muscles and bone down there. So I crawled back. I didn't have a weapon. I'm laying there, and the bullets are flying all around. And I watched the guy in front of me take a round, and I'm yelling at the guys behind in the platoon, get up here, get the machine gun up here. We had one machine gun with us. And those guys came. They came charging up across that little bamboo footbridge and laid down on both sides of me. And they set up a base of fire. And those guys were, I bet you not one of them volunteered. This was February of 1970. These were guys who had FTA written on their camouflage. They were crossing off the days, the 178/177 on the camouflage cover band. Some of them had been smoking dope.
No. They were what?
And if I'd caught them, I'd have busted them. And I don't think any of them could understand integral calculus. In fact, most of them probably weren't high school graduates. They were the guys who just answered the call. They were from California and Texas. This guy next to me from Michigan. Sergeant Bodine was the point man. They were white, they were black, they were brown. And in that minute, in that instant, they were my brothers.
Amen.
So I learned a lot from that. Carried with me all my life. My West Point class graduated 573. 30 were killed in Vietnam. No telling how many of us were wounded. Most of us still suffer. Now, like many others, I had PTSD. Of course, I didn't know it. We didn't know what it was. And I came back and I took the 3rd Company Command. I was at Fort Knox. And 9 years later, I was a major. I was writing speeches and traveling with General Hagen. It was the 19th of February, the day I got wounded 9 years before, and I'm shaving cream on the morning. Looked at myself in the mirror, I said, finally, it hit me. I said, I'm really mad at myself. I didn't kill that guy that shot me. I should have killed him. And I replayed the action, and I realized I've been replaying that action in my mind 1,000 times. And it finally came up how angry I was at myself. Not at him, but at my failure. And yeah, I mean, actually, we did find some blood trails. But you think about that, and then in later years I thought back, okay, what was it like when I first got back from Vietnam? Now that we know what PTSD is, okay, I'll tell you. Here's what happened to me. So I come out of the hospital, I go to Fort Knox, I take command of C Company in this tank battalion, and we've got, supposed to have 91 men, we had 72. Everybody had been in Vietnam, most of them were short timers coming out. We had 16 tanks, we had to move them around for the lieutenants to wreck and tank gunnery and stuff like that. So it was like, I called it a sacrifice company because all we did was drive the tanks out to the range at 4 o'clock in the morning. The lieutenants would get on and they'd fire. They'd say, "This tank doesn't work." We'd go out there. We'd be dragging them back at 7, 8 o'clock at night, day after day after day. And I think I won the battalion re-enlistment award that summer because I had one man who re-enlisted. But I think back to that time. So here I am. I can't run because my leg's not healed. I can't shoot a pistol because I can't pull the trigger. And I thought, I had a 6-month-old baby that was born when I was in Vietnam, and so my wife was busy with the baby, and I'm thinking, I need to, everybody's talking about mutual funds. I'm going to learn about mutual funds. So I took this course and had to drive to Indianapolis and pass a test to be a securities dealer while I was a company commander. And then I thought, my next door neighbor was reading this about national security. I thought, I don't really understand what's going on with Vietnam and why this all happened. I'm going to take that course. So I was doing that at the same time. And then people in the armor career class, they were like, "Hey, let's play some chess while the instructor's talking. We'll have these little plastic chessboards with the magnets, and he won't see us." So then I tried to do security. Finally, after about 3 months of this, my wife stood in the middle of this horrible army little quarters with red and black linoleum tile. And she held this 6-month-old baby in her arms, and she screamed at me. She said, "If you don't stop this, I'm leaving, and you'll never see him again." I'm like, what? Where's this coming from? All I'm doing is working like 20 hours a day. I realize now how bizarre that must have been. But, all of us suffer from this in one way or another. And when I was at the Vietnam Veterans Wall in 1982 when it opened, and I looked at the guys in torn field jackets with the patches, and I thought, I don't understand. I still didn't get it. It's taken me a long time to really understand it. So, what I'm trying to say is, we're all brothers here. But I stayed in. So along the way, I figured I'd study. So I thought I couldn't do anything more with my life than stay in and try to help. I studied a lot about Vietnam. I tried to learn the lessons. And I thought about Vietnam, 58,000 dead, 1 million or 2 million Vietnamese dead. We wrecked their country, wrecked ours politically. Still overhangs our policies today. And I thought, what went wrong? I made up my mind, if I ever had to say about it, that we would never, ever commit U.S. troops unless we had a strategy and a determination to win. War is ugly. It's a bad thing. You go to war only as a last resort. The diplomats always think, hey, this is too hard, we can't get this to discuss. Let's turn it over to the military, they'll solve it. Absolutely not. That is not the way it's done. So I had my first chance on this. I was a lieutenant colonel. I was working with the team that was writing the briefing papers for General John Wickham before he became chief of staff for the Army in 1983. Colin Powell was a two-star at that point, and I was a lieutenant colonel, and I was on the team. And we'd written all these papers, a couple of big, thick books like this, full of briefing documents. And I was the last one to leave the room in the afternoon, and General Powell said, "Well, here it is." I said, "But don't we write some kind of like an introduction to it?" He said, "Yeah, we should do that." He said, "Well, what would he say?" And I pulled it out. "Never commit American forces unless you're determined to win. And when you go in with overwhelming power." So General Powell took it and became the Powell Doctrine. They changed overwhelming to decisive because overwhelming sounded too mean. So I wanted to be, a little more correct by saying decisive force. But actually we did that. About 3 months later, the United States kicked this communist group out of Grenada. We sent 20,000 troops in. There were 600 Cuban engineers there and some thugs, and the press said, "Oh, this was so unfair." Yeah, and it was over in 3 days. And we did the same thing in Panama, and we did the same thing in the Gulf War in 1991. And when it was my turn, a few years later, I was the commander of NATO, and the Serbs started this ethnic cleansing again in the Balkans, and the politicos came to me and said, "What are we going to do?" So I went to the White House. I set up a series of plans, and we would start, because you have to use diplomacy as well as force. So we would start by flying some airplanes around, and then if that didn't work, we might drop some bombs. But if that didn't work, we would go in. And they said, "What? You mean we would go in? And what if it doesn't stop in Kosovo? Would you go into Yugoslavia? Would you go all the way to Belgrade?" And I said, "You're damn right we will." And I made them sign up to that. All those French and German diplomats and all those guys in striped pants are like, "Well, I think we'll just drop a couple of bombs and maybe put some soldiers there. Maybe we'll scare the Serbs into stopping what they're doing." And I'm like, "Oh, you started down this road, you finish it." Yep. So, sure enough, when we started down this road, after we flew the airplanes around and dropped a couple of bombs, Serbs didn't stop. It was 78 days. We prepared a ground force invasion. I got the diplomacy started with Secretary of State Albright, and we got the Russians in on it. And after 78 days, I knew the mind of the enemy, because I had spent all this time with President Milosevic. I knew he was a lawyer, and I met with him in the big peace talks, and he had these. Well, I asked him. I said, "Mr. President, what sports did you do when you were a young man?" He said, "General Clark, I did not do sports, so my mother wanted me to study." And I looked at his hands. He had this kind of soft, puffy hands, and I said, "I know I can take this guy." And after 78 days, we took him. And we finished that campaign, and we didn't lose a single soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine to hostile fire. We had a couple of guys killed in aviation accidents. And today, Kosovo is an independent country. And there's no more Serb ethnic cleansing. I had dinner with the ambassador from Kosovo the other night, and she said, when I first heard the sounds of the NATO jets coming in, she said, I knew we were saved. So you try to learn your lessons, and you try to live them through your life, and I was lucky enough to be able to do that. I wasn't in uniform for Iraq or Afghanistan, and that's been tragic. But we're the ones who know that tragedy the best. We saw it, we fought it, we lived it in Vietnam and afterwards. We need to stand up for future generations. We need to insist on the right policies. We need to avoid war at all, if at all possible. But if we go to war, we must insist that our political leaders have a strategy to win. and the intention to do just that. And we got to take care of each other, not only when we're in uniform, but afterwards. The veterans, the wounded survivors, the families. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the mission, and it hasn't ended. Thank you.
VVA Chapter 1067, Serving Vietnam-Era Veterans. Never again will one generation of veterans abandon another. Thank you for watching.